Kia ora guys, my name's James, welcome to the Distant Vale, and today we're going to be looking at how we put together the small Star Wars diorama, which is a 600 by 900 representation of one of the Clone Wars scenes. Going back to my early childhood, the early 2000s, Star Wars Attack of the Clones was released, the second film. And there's one particular scene in it that's kind of stuck with me throughout my adult life, and that was where Yoda exits the gunship onto the command station. And I thought, well, if we're going to do a diorama, we've been working with some pretty cool guys at Darkfire Designs and Anvil Rage, and also we're working on some Atomic Mass Games models at the moment. So we thought, well, why not just put a big diorama together? And over the next 5-10 minutes, I'm just going to slowly, or very quickly in fact, walk you through what we've done. Apologies for some of the camera angles. There's definitely the back of my head in a couple of the shots, and I'm just still trying to work out how to do this on YouTube, so bear with me. Starting off as you always do, started priming the command station. Now the command station is actually by 3.5 Design, easily accessible on Etsy, and we printed this off an FDM using an Anycubic Cobra Neo and Sunlu Meta yellow, I believe. Anyway, so we're just priming it with Mecha Color Black, and following the prime with Mecha Color Black, we're going to go over it with Titanium White Liquitex Soft Body. That's been mixed down with some acrylic painting medium and some flow improver. Now, the reason you're using this is the white is a really true white. It's not a grey, it's not an off colour, it's probably as white a paint as you can get from the pigments. And it's a really good place to start, especially if you're going to add oil paints or any washes over the top. Giving it a really good coat with the airbrush. Now that we've got that really good coat of white base coat on, I'm going to go around and start putting all the details in. I'm using a really large synthetic brush for this. Normally I'd use a Kolinsky brush, but it's the first one that came to my hand. Using two thin coats, Berserker Red, and then using their set of 3 colours to highlight later on, but going over the details with that Berserker Red. Following this, the only other real details is the black lining across some of the rims at the front of the command station, and then the consoles where the, I'd say, operators would be sitting. Quite an easy block colour in, doesn't need to be anything in particular detail. Once we've then finished that, I've not included the step on this, but we just basically put an oil wash over the top of it, using a Payne's Grey oil wash just to give a little bit of detail to it. But obviously with it being an FDM print, it's not perfectly smooth, so you've got to be careful on how you apply that. Now time for the big boy, the clone gunship, which has been printed using a Merrilabs TGM7. Now this is so many parts, 3 trays. And what wasn't even shown on there is all of the clear plastic panels for the windows and the canopies. Now, used probably about 3 tubes of super glue in total on this. It took absolutely ages to put together. Putting all the wings together, and then all the different gun canopies and all the other details. The step that's not included in this is actually going through and filling in some of the panel lines, especially around the base. Nice easy job, glue everything together, and then we move on to getting a good prime on it. I think total print time with this, I think it took me the best part of about 3 or 4 days to get everything printed on an Anycubic Photon Mono X6KS. Just so many different parts, but it's such a good quality design by Darkfire, really well supported. I did get a few print failures, and that added a little bit of extra time. You can see when I'm just putting all the parts together there that there's been an ever so slight warp on one of the base plates that needed a little bit of filling as well. So now that we've done that, I've primed this with a Rattle Can White, and just thought I'd see what the difference was. We used a Montana 94 White. It's done a pretty good job. The only thing I found is that there's a slight, although it's a matte paint, there's a slightly gloss finish on it. So then going through and panel lining everything, so with just a really watered down black primer, and then going back over that with a titanium white just to try and make it a little bit more muted. The next stage, as with the command stations, going around and lining all the details. So I went around again with that Berserker red, lining the canopy and some of the details on the wings that you'll see in a sec. Another step that I unfortunately forgot to record was going around the nose art of the gunship and painting that with a lime green. Now, it's a pretty tricky colour to match it to the lore, but I used a Vallejo model colour lime green and then added a couple of different primary colours just to get it a little bit closer to where it is. And as I was saying, moving on, nice little shot of the back of my head there. Moving on, there's quite a lot of red detail trim. Now, when you're doing this, I've seen quite a few people go through and do it with masking tape. One of the difficulties with masking tape is it can sometimes, if you're not careful, pull paint off or pull your primer off, especially when you've been using airbrush paints since they apply such a thin coat. Now, the easy way around this is by going through and adding a layer of varnish. If I'm honest, in terms of like brush control, I just found it easier just to go around and with a really steady hand go around and just line it with a brush rather than going through with an airbrush. The too thin coats, even not being applied through an airbrush, it applies really well and you can't really see any brush strokes with it. For the next stage, big block of 50mm XPS foam, all of this beautiful scenery from Anvil Range. Went through with wood glue, thicker PVA glue, applied everything to it. Set up where I thought the gunship was going to go and where the command station was going to go, and then stuck all this scenery in. The next joyous step is adding copious amounts of sand. For this, I pre-mixed a load of ballast for railways rather than using normal sand, just because I quite like the detail and like the grit that was in it for geonosis. Going through multiple stages of glue, adding a load of ballast and then going over the top of that with a spray, first spraying isopropyl alcohol and then spraying watered down PVA to set it. Now this takes absolutely ages, but it's worthwhile doing because it sets like concrete. I'm not including the next step, which was just painting this base section because I've gotten a little bit of a rush, we're going back to work. So it was sprayed with a rattle can of Montana 94 Mars Orange, and then multiple dry brush highlights, just using really cheap brown acrylics just to get it to the tone that I wanted it to. Briefly touched on before in terms of the TGM7 that we used by Amera Labs. One of the other steps was the clear canopies. Now, I tried so many different resins with this, and the best resin turnout I did get was the TGM7 clear. That's with polishing and multiple mist coats of gloss varnish. Tried it with so many different techniques, different polishing compounds, and the clearest I could get was with that TGM7. So the next step was fitting all the canopies, fitting the miniatures into the canopies, doing all the gun turrets and squaring all those away and then putting them together. And then once we've got all of those together, it was time to put everything into one final piece. So thanks for sticking with me, guys. Appreciate it's a really quick fly through and I missed a couple of steps out, but I just wanted to kind of put across the scale of the work for these dioramas. It's not so simple as just, painting a couple of miniatures and putting them on a board. It does take quite a lot of time and quite a lot of resources to do. With that in mind, it's time to have a look at what we've managed to do and time to reveal that final miniature. And thanks for sticking with it. Thank you so much for watching so far and watching the video with me, and thanks for bearing with. And I mean, we're new on this YouTube journey and I'm still trying to get to grips with the camera angles and the editing, so really appreciate you taking the time to watch, and hit like and subscribe. I'm sure we can only improve from here.